Take it. Thanks, Leanne. If you do have any questions that you don't want to be part of the recorded meeting, then feel free to hold on at the end and we'll stop the recording and have questions if that's the right thing. And if you want to pop them in the chat, that doesn't get fed through to the recording either, so we can work it that way. Thank you very much to everybody for joining today. We think that just about everybody on the call is a new induction tutor or hasn't been an induction tutor for some time. If you are an experienced induction tutor with us, then absolutely fine for you still to be here. There won't be much that you haven't heard before, but obviously it's always good to have a little bit of a refresher. So hopefully it's a suitable meeting for everybody. I just wanted to start by showing you some pictures. These are images. They're a mixture, I think, of last year and this year's ECT celebration event. And I just thought it's nice to remind ourselves why we're here, why we're doing this. We've had 2 cohorts now complete the early career framework, and it's people like yourselves who are supporting them as induction tutors and maybe mentors that make it happen. So just thought it's quite nice. This is an event that we have at the end of the 2 years. You can see we've got some nice balloons and lights. We put on a little bit of a party and we have a bit of a few guest speakers just to celebrate the fact that the ECTs have made it through those 2 years, and mentors and induction tutors are very welcome to attend that. So hopefully we'll be seeing you at one of those soon. I just wanted to introduce myself first for those of you that haven't met me before. My name's Liz Cullis. I'm the director of the Balcarres Teaching School Hub and also the appropriate body lead. So my role is very much supporting the delivery of the framework programme, but also supporting you as induction tutors in your schools. I am an induction tutor myself. I've done that role now for 10 years. And we have between maybe 2 and 8 new ECTs a year at Balcarres. So I've seen lots of different ECTs in lots of different settings, and hopefully a lot of that knowledge and I can transfer and support you going forward. We've also got Leanne on the meeting today. So Leanne's the operations manager here at the Balcarres Teaching School Hub. She really is the first port of call for you as induction tutors when it comes to anything to do, particularly with the appropriate body support. She's there at the end of the phone. She's in school every day, and she's not even just term time only. She's here all throughout the year. So if there are ever any concerns that you need, that email address at the bottom of that screen is our admin address here at Balcarres, and Leanne will pick that up and get back to you. The other 2 people that we have that work with us for the AB are John Jones and Neil Spadell. John is a very, very experienced primary head teacher, just very recently retired. And Neil, similarly, a very experienced secondary head teacher, recently retired. They would be the people that would come in, visit you, support, and they're really very much a go-to. So we've got a really great, strong, experienced team here at Balcarres Teaching School Hub, and we're here to help. The plan for today is just to run through a few of the basics around what we're here for as an appropriate body, the roles and responsibilities that we have, and then just to talk mainly in this session about ECT Manager, the upcoming progress reviews, the observations that you might be doing, and just to make sure that everyone's clear on what's happening for the rest of the year. If you are a new induction tutor and you do have any questions, then we'll do that at the end. I realise the timings on this slide are slightly wrong. We started at 4:15, not 4 o'clock. So just shuffle that through. But I'm hoping that we'll be done by 4:45. It's not a long meeting. And I can hang around afterwards and take any questions if needed. Okay, so one thing I really just wanted to do at the beginning is make very clear what the role of the appropriate body is. So appropriate bodies have been in existence for as long as teacher induction has been a thing. Up until 3 years ago, the local authority were the appropriate body for Gloucestershire. And so if you've worked in this for a long time under the previous iterations of, when we had NQTs, you probably would have been working with the local authority. The inception of the teaching school hubs has meant that the local authority are no longer appropriate body. That's been taken away across the whole country. and the teaching school hubs have that role instead. So our role is to work with you as the induction tutor at the school and to work with the ECTs to make sure that they successfully complete the statutory induction element of their training. So that is very strictly directed by guidelines from the DfE as to what we have to do in order for them to basically gain full statutory induction. So those top 2 bullet points there talk about that. We also have a role in checking that the ECTs are receiving their ECF programme. So that programme of support and training, most of you are with Balcarres Teaching School Hub for the early career framework delivery as well. So as a teaching school hub, we have both of those roles. We are an AB and we are supporting you in delivering that programme. And that's the programme that UCL run. As an induction tutor, your main role is actually about statutory induction, and your mentors in school are the ones that are on the ground with the early career framework. So if anyone did have any more questions about how that works at the end, I'll go through that in a little bit more detail, but I think that most people are fairly happy with that. The questions that we get over that is to do with timings, and I'm sure if some of you are sat here with ECTs who are part-time, then there's often more questions about when can they complete this bit, when can they complete that bit. The ECF can be completed faster than the statutory induction can. So if you have any questions around that, we can deal with that at the end. I just thought I'd put this slide up. I know there's quite a lot of text on here. This really is a summary of your role as an induction tutor. So already you or your head teacher have completed points 1 and 2. The fact that you're here means that you will probably back in the summer have signed your ECTs up on the DfE platform, completed any relevant registration, nominated us as your AB, and then got them all set up on ECT Manager. And there's a bit more information on ECT Manager later. So there's sort of the paperwork formal side of it is a responsibility that you have. And then it's about supporting the ECT and the mentors throughout that statutory induction and the early career framework. There are a few things that you really must do. I'm going to talk now as if you have ECTs that are full-time and permanent posts. The timelines and how often you have to do things might vary a little bit if you've got part-time ECTs, but again, we can talk about that later. So you have to formally observe your ECT termly. Now, on top of that, it doesn't say it here, you should have already seen them within the first 4 weeks of them being in your school. That didn't have to be a formal observation. That could have just been a drop-in, 15, 20 minutes, just to check in on them really, so that they know who you are, you know who they are, and that you're just able to pick up on any early issues. If you haven't already done that, it's not the end of the world now, but going forward, if you have a new ECT in the future, you should really drop in and see them within the first 4 weeks. The first formal observations should be happening now if you haven't already done them. So I've just booked in, I've got 3 ECTs this year, and I'm seeing them over the next 3 weeks. I'm seeing 1 a week. I've got that booked in. I've allowed those ECTs to, they were the first year ECTs, I've allowed them to choose which lesson I come to so that I'm not putting them any under particular pressure. The second year ECTs, there's a few gaps. So I haven't maybe seen them teach A level, or I haven't seen them teach a low prior attainment group. So I've picked those a little bit more carefully just to make sure that I'm supporting them in all areas. You should be formally observing the ECT. We do have sample observation forms that you can use if you want to. I'll talk a bit more about observations a little bit later. Alongside observing them, you should be meeting with them. Now, people do this in a variety of ways, and we're not overly fussy about how you do that, but nothing that you do should come as a surprise to your ECT. So they should know that you're going to observe them. You might talk to them beforehand about what you're hoping to see, and then you should be sitting down afterwards and giving them some feedback on their observations, setting targets for moving forward. All of that should be done within the context of meeting the teacher standards. That's the key. They cannot complete their 2-year induction if they are not meeting the teacher standards. So observations around the teacher standards are really helpful. You'll never see every standard in one lesson. I'm sure you're all really experienced and you know that. So it's about getting in there and just looking for some evidence and then talking to people about other evidence as well. You then need to complete the progress reviews and the annual assessment forms. I'll talk about those in a moment. And then another role that you have is just to keep us informed. If you have concerns with the ECT, work with us. We are here to support the ECT, but we are absolutely here to support you as well. And it's much better that we know early so that we can offer the support that you need. If you've got any niggling doubts or questions, please do get in touch with us. We are very much here to help. The other thing that you should be doing is making sure that the ECT and the mentors are getting the PPA time that they deserve, and that the ECTs are released to go to any training for the ECF. So if you're with us and UCL, then those ECTs must be released to come to our training sessions. The mentors and the ECTs should be meeting weekly for a full-time ECT in year 1 and fortnightly for a full-time ECT in year 2. And the mentor has to have additional time on their timetable for that. We do checks, we do timetable checks on this. It is really important the school is paid for that time to be given. And then if you are with us as a delivery partner for the ECF, which most of you are, if your ECTs can't make it to any of the sessions, the request for swaps needs to come through you, not through the ECT. So they could switch to a different cluster on a different day. And if that doesn't work, then there is an online version that they can catch up with. So those are all the things that we would like you to be doing as an induction tutor. If there's any questions on that anyone wanted to ask, then you can either ask now, or you might find that I answer it a little bit later in the session, or just pop questions in the chat if you want to, and we've got an eye on that. Okay, just to really clarify, the IT role is very different from the role of the mentor. There may well be some of you here who are both the induction tutor and the mentor. If you are, then it can be challenging because you're trying to wear 2 hats. Please let us know. We can help you and support you with that if you feel that you need that support. The mentor is the person that is meeting weekly or fortnightly with the ECT. They are the ones following the early career framework materials. They'll be logging into UCL Extend. And the mentor is not making a judgment on the teaching of the ECT. So they're following this non-judgmental on-side approach. They can talk to you about their concerns, but they shouldn't be the person that is judging the quality of the teaching of the ECT. Now that can be hard if they are a direct line manager, which is one reason why actually we often recommend it's better if the mentor is not a line manager, but obviously that doesn't always work. And the mentor has to attend more training by us. These sessions for you are optional extras. So again, if there are any questions around that later, then do let me know. So there are a number of key documents. Again, I've just realised I haven't updated this. Apologies. You should have the 24-25 appropriate body handbook. And all the key documents that you need are in that handbook. There's links to the statutory guidance. In the back, there are appendices of progress review forms, assessment forms, lesson observations, and support plans. If you don't have that handbook or you're struggling to find it, they are on our website, or just drop us an email. They're also all stored on ECT Manager in the resources section. So there's multiple ways for you to find that. It's always worth a look through that handbook before you contact us, just in case the answer is easily there. But again, do get in touch with us if you need to. I mentioned the teacher standards earlier. I'm not going to zoom in on this. We will all be aware of them, the 8 standards. Part 1 is teaching, part 2 is personal and professional conduct. And as I said earlier, it's those standards that we are assessing the ECTs against in your role as an induction tutor. Okay, so the first thing that I think most of us probably want to know about is these progress review forms. If your ECT started in September, or if they are in year 2, and again, they started in September and they're full time, then the progress review forms are due on Friday, the 13th of December. You will get a ping from ECT Manager a couple of weeks ahead to say that they're open and that you can start to fill them out. Please try and meet that deadline. It really helps us. We've got quite a lot of work to do to check them. It becomes particularly important to meet the deadlines when it comes to the end of year assessments. And I'll mention that a little bit more later. If your ECT is part-time, then that deadline might be different because obviously they're not necessarily accruing the days that a full-time ECT would. ECT Manager does all of those calculations. So if you log in at any point and have a look on it, it will tell you what the due date is for your ECT. But for most people, it is the 13th of December. This form is not an assessment. It is a check. All right. Thanks, Lynn. No worries. We'll send you the recording. There is an opportunity for the ECT to make a small comment. And I'll show you an exemplar in a moment. These are not meant to be taking you a huge amount of time. This is a big workload issue for induction tutors, especially if you are at a big secondary school and you have lots of them to do. It very much is about quality rather than quantity. At the moment, you've probably got an observation that you've done, and then just maybe some general feedback from the mentor or from anyone else that's working with them. We're not expecting you to write about every standard. We just want to know how they're getting on. So when you log into ECT Manager, some basic details that you will need to know, and it's often useful to have this prep before you try and quickly meet the deadline. All the contract details will be pre-populated. So this screen shows you the things that you would have put in. This is an exemplar one. So days served between the 2nd of September, the 20th of December. It will tell you the days employed, and then there's a box at the bottom that asks about absence. So I always email the administrator that deals with absence requests a few days ahead of me knowing I'm going to do the form, and ask her to send me the absence up until that point. And I then say to her, if they're off in the next few days, please drop me an email and let me know. We know that you're going to have to just pick a point where you give their absence. It might be that it's, the next day after you've done the form, they're away. That's fine. That can come into the next report. But try and not do this too early, otherwise you're not accurately reflecting that period. Okay. It will ask if they are going to continue to be with you at the school in the next period. Does that stay full time? Is that still a permanent post? So they're really quick, easy boxes to tick. And then it will basically ask you whether the ECT has continued access to the early career framework materials. Now, I haven't made this a live link. The drop down basically says yes or no. So if they are with us, with UCL on that programme, you can just click yes. If you are a school that is delivering that yourself, and I don't think we've got anyone on the call today that is, although there are some schools in Gloucestershire, then you are basically stating that that ECT is receiving all of their support. And that's the bit that is subject to scrutiny by Ofsted. If you're with us for the programme, then you're meeting all the Ofsted requirements. If you're delivering it yourself, then obviously you need to make sure that that's the case. But I don't think there's anyone here today that is relevant for. And then you just make a recommendation. Is the ECT on track at the formal assessment point at the end of year 1 and year 2 to meet the standards? And it is on track. It doesn't mean they have to be meeting everything right now, but do you feel that they are on track? And you say yes or no. Now, obviously, if it's a no, we will then pick up and support you, and we'll look at why. If it's a yes, you don't hear any more from us. There is then a small bit of further information that you have to fill out, and it is literally this one box for the progress reviews. Brief details as to why your ECT is on track or is not on track, and then briefly describe any agreed development targets. Okay, so we do feel it's useful to fill this in. I mean, as they come towards the end of 2 years, it can get a bit harder to give development targets, but it's worth filling it in. And I've got here, let's get this right. Oh, there's a couple of other questions I missed there. I animated that wrong. Oh yeah, these are to do with part-time. So if they're less than, sorry, I've got those around the wrong way. If the ECT is less than 0.1, do you envisage that you might want us to reduce induction? If your ECT is part-time, technically they need to we need to pro-rata and they need to stay for longer. So if they were 0.5, they should technically take 4 years to finish. But you can request early induction. It can't be any earlier than 2 years. You could ask for a shortened induction. So if your ECT is 0.9 and they're fabulous and they're meeting all the standards, then at the end of the 2 years, you could request completion at that point. Advantages, they get it done. Disadvantages, they lose their extra time. So they lose their 5 or 10% extra time if they finish early. That's up to you to decide. And you just need to confirm. So this is an example. This is a redacted example from a real ECT. I just want you to see that's all that you need to write. So that box that said give brief details for the reasons as to whether you think they're on track or not. They've been an asset to the school, making an impact as a key part of the department, heavily involved in the preparation and delivery of house events. What they've done in the space of 14 weeks is incredible. Students are enjoying the lessons. In the formal observation that was watched by the induction tutor, every student was engaged, challenged, and made progress. The work booklets were being used. Verbal formative feedback and praise were in abundance. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read it all out. So just some things. You can see that they are linked to the standards, but I am not expecting anybody to be like standard 2.1, this, that. We don't need that for a progress review. Development targets. They will continue to develop their work on behaviour management of low-level disruption, tricky time with a tutor group, one particular student, some work around that, and then continue to develop feedback, assessment, send, provision. That's it. That's all that we're looking for. What we're planning on doing, there are some exemplars, on ECT Manager, but actually some of them I think are too long. So we are just working on a new pack of exemplars that we will send out, maybe not in time for this first progress review, but certainly for other ones. And that's the sort of thing that we should be doing. So hopefully that's reassuring that these first reviews are not too onerous. They're very powerful though. They're really important. And they give us all an idea as to how that ECT is doing. When we get to the end of the year, so again, for that full-time ECT that started in September, at the end of year 1, and then again at the end of year 2, you will have to complete full assessment forms. And these are a little bit more hefty. Again, you need to complete them. I've seen horror stories of people asking mentors or even the ECTs to do these themselves. It must be you that writes them. And these are a little bit more detailed. These are really important as well that you get them into us in time. At the end of year 2, once that final form is submitted, we have 20 days from the deadline for the form to full submission. We have to check it, we have to inform the school, and we have to inform the teacher regulation agency. And obviously that's July and people start going on holiday. So we will have a moderation panel on the 11th of July for the year 2 ECTs, and we check every form and make decisions if there are any tricky decisions to be made. So please, can I just emphasise how important the deadlines are? Otherwise that process can't necessarily happen. The assessment form, a little bit longer. So this is an example of teaching standards 1 to 4, just about 1 to 5. This is where at the end of that first year, you will be writing a little bit more. So for each standard, a comment, an area for development. And again, it's not hugely onerous. We're not asking you to comment on every element of each standard, but this should be giving a much stronger sense, I would say, of whether that ECT is meeting the standard. Sometimes it can be really hard to write a development target, so don't feel that you have to for every single element. But across the standards, we should be seeing a little bit more. So again, that's just an exemplar to show you where we're going really and what we're looking for. If there are any problems, we have a support plan. Now, I'm not going to spend long talking about this. This is something to talk to us about. There are some things, if things are really going a little bit pear-shaped, talking to us and making sure that the support plan is in place before any consideration of capability or failing an ECT. The earlier you talk to us, the better. There's nothing wrong with an ECT having a support plan. All right, it doesn't mean that they're going to fail. It is absolutely about ensuring that they are fully supported and that they have a clear strategy as to how to improve and get to the standard that you want as an induction tutor and that they need to pass. So those things are there, they're in the handbook. And then, like I said, we do have some exemplar observation forms there as well. As I said, it should be one formal observation per term prior to the progress review or the assessment, plus that 4-week drop-in. You can use your own forms if you want to. Depends on what your school have got. There's less and less observation forms out there now as kind of evidence around observations changes. But they are important. The mentors will be doing some, and I'm going to use observations in inverted commas. They will be doing some observations, but those are to do with the programme, the Early Career Framework programme. They are not to be done in place of these formal observations that you do as an induction tutor. One thing I think is important to say here is it's fine if you want to ask someone else to do a couple of these. You're seeing them 6 times over the 2 years. If I have a huge amount of ECTs, sometimes I might ask one of the other senior team to do that observation for me, particularly if it's a subject area that they line manage. And the other thing is, if the head of department is not the mentor, then sometimes it's nice for the head of department to go and do an observation as well. I wouldn't ask that if they were the mentor, because it blurs the lines between the non-judgmental and the judgmental. But that is okay. It just needs to be that you do the vast majority of these yourself. Some schools have a second induction lead, and that's fine for them to be doing it. Okay, we're nearly there. Just a couple of things. We wanted to reassure you really that we have some really strict quality assurance processes in place. So we do the pre-induction checks, we check the timetables, we're doing that at the moment. So if you haven't yet uploaded your ECT and mentor timetable and an example of a timetable for a full-time member of staff with no responsibility, could you upload those into ECT Manager? So we do that to make sure that everything is kind of ticking the statutory boxes. We will make some monitoring visits. So we aim to see 20% of our schools every year. So if we come to see you, it's not because we think there's a problem or an issue. We come and see a range of schools every year. And it's John and Neil, who I mentioned earlier, that will come and do those as our AB leads. You'll be informed, we'll talk to you about what dates work. And when they come in, they'll just have a meeting with you, a meeting with the mentors and a meeting with ECTs, and possibly go and do a little bit of a learning walk. The job is not for us to come in and be observing everybody in a monitoring visit. If you have concerns, if the ECT has concerns, then we can arrange a support visit. And that might include some observations so that we can see whether everyone's on the same page. So that's another key part of our quality assurance. And then at the end of the year, we do have the moderation panel that I mentioned earlier. Our decision making, we have representatives from the primary and secondary sector, other head teachers who are not directly involved in what we do. And we basically do go through all the ECTs and talk in a lot of detail about the tricky decisions and about the early completion requests. So that's all done. The other thing we do, we do a peer review process with other appropriate bodies. So we've been working closely over the last couple of years with Oxfordshire, looking at their processes. We work obviously very closely with Odyssey Teaching School Hub, and we mirror everything that they do so that all of Gloucestershire has the same process. And we've also done some work this year with Cornwall Teaching School Hub and one of the hubs in Dorset to make sure that our processes and our systems are fair and robust. So that's just a reassurance for you as to what we're doing. this is not so much for you to worry about, maybe the head teacher, if you're not the head teacher, that, you know, our invoicing, we basically charge £250 per ECT per year for all of these services. And that includes support, you know, initial support visits as well. If they start later, you get charged less. So we'll pro rata everything throughout the year. So those invoices, I think, Leanne might correct me, will already be out or going out shortly if they are not. And that's it. That's all that I wanted to say. Did anyone have any questions that are suitable for everyone before I stop or before Leanne stops the recording? And if not, we can stop the recording and then take anything else if needed. Silence is a good thing here. Hopefully I've said everything that needs to be said.